Hello and welcome. US President Donald Trump's trade advisor has now said, and I quote, US tariffs have been placed on India as they cheat on us, the US, he says, on trade. Quote close, he also said, and he also called India the Maharaja of tariffs. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has said the US logic on tariffs is perplexing and hit out at the US's hypocrisy altogether. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy market, including buying oil from Russia, he said. While the Chinese envoy has also called Trump a bully and has slammed the US's 50% tariffs on India, China's ambassador to India wrote in a post on X and he said China firmly stands with India to uphold the multilateral trading system and safeguard international fairness and justice. So, what does all this tariff talk really mean going forward? As August 27th approaches, remember August 27th is when the additional 25% tariffs on India take effect. Well, to decode all of this, I'm joined by Senior Economist Mitali Nikore. Mitali, thank you for your time. Trump's trade advisors, Maharaja Jibe at India, amid the tariff face-off, and India's External Affairs Minister saying the US logic on tariffs is perplexing. What do we really make of all this tariff talk?
No, absolutely, Sakshi. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. I think at the end of the day, the way the trade advisor to the White House, that's Peter Navarro, has made statements this morning have been quite spurious and they have not been rooted in data or facts. And then when we contrast the statement that was made by the Indian Foreign Minister, Mr. Jaishankar, or the entire statement made by Mr. Jaishankar had several data points, had several facts, minutes and records of discussions that had happened between the India and the US. And at the end of the day, it sort of made it very clear that neither is India the largest buyer of Russian oil, nor is India, seen a very high increase in purchasing, Russian energy products, especially vis-a-vis other nations like the, nations of the EU or China. And therefore, the entire question that he's raised in front of the international community today is why is the US singular, having this singular sort of reaction to India, and why is Peter Navarro constantly, targeting India in these remarks? Because at the end of the day, there is no data to prove that India is actually the largest buyer of Russian oil, or India has increased its purchases much more than China and EU in the last few years. So it's not rooted in any sort of fact, and it seems to be going in the direction of just one person constantly telling the White House, single India out.
That's very, very important to note here that look, this is not rooted in data at all. And that's what India has been reiterating as well that look, India's tariff truth is data driven. But what can India do and what sector specific measures then that India can take to really cushion the impact on exporters and small and medium enterprises then, Mitali?
So, Sakshi, in this situation for India and for the government of India, it becomes very critical to understand who is the White House listening to. Who are the champions? Who are the, people who are the well-wishers of, India-US relations? That can really go and make the case in back channel conversations for renewed ties between India and the US, and for the White House not to push India so far away. I think that is the first step, really, that back channel conversations have to continue, back channel negotiations have to continue, because today, if Peter Navarro is going in front of the media and making these statements which are not researched, which are not driven by policy, which are not driven by data, India needs its own, sort of champions who believe in the Indo-US relationship to continue to, work with the White House and continue to find, common ground. Secondly, having said that, of course, that relationship with the US is always going to be critical. But secondly, India has to look at safeguarding the interest of very vulnerable, communities. MSMEs are the most vulnerable. Women entrepreneurs, traders, those which have high exposure to US export orders. There are certain companies and clusters across the country, especially textile clusters. I was reading yesterday that one of the textile clusters in Tamil Nadu is facing particularly an issue because 70-80% of their orders are actually targeted for the US markets. So there are certain clusters which are going to feel that pain more than the whole industry. It's not textiles as a whole, but maybe that one particular place. Similarly, with shrimps and with seafood, we know that nearly 80% of seafood which is targeted for US exports comes from a particular cluster in Andhra Pradesh. So I think it becomes very, very critical, that we look at how certain clusters domestically are going to be impacted, and the government comes up with social protection programs for the people in those clusters for the short term pain. And point number three is really around diversification. We have to start working, and I think this is something which the government of India is doing admirably, even at this stage. We are strengthening our core relationships within the BRICS countries, but then we're also doing a free trade agreement with the UK. We're negotiating a free trade agreement with Australia and the EU, and we will start looking at countries like Japan, South Korea down the line. So I think really the three strategies working together is what will help us in the long run.
Right, that's very, very crucial to note because India does need to take all these measures, like you said, not only in the near term, but also in the long term to diversify, to be far more self reliant. That really is the aim. And how can we tackle the shifting global trade landscape, Mitali, and emerge far more successful than already?
So I think for India at this point in time, some of the strategies that have worked for other countries in the global south may not work because several countries in the global south pick sectors, and they say that we have a competitive advantage in sector A, or we have a competitive advantage in sector B, and then they sort of specialize. But in India, our economy is very, very vast, our population is very vast, and we need to sort of move to a situation where we are much more self-reliant as opposed to smaller global south economies, simply because of the vastness of our population and size. Therefore I think it becomes critical for different states to work together and for different districts to work together. The one district one product sort of idea which was started in Uttar Pradesh has now spread to a number of other states. Today I am in Madhya Pradesh, and even here we see a huge focus on one district one product. So I think with these kind of innovative strategies to leverage the strengths of local MSMEs and then increase intra-state trade and intra-state coordination, we can actually strengthen our economy and make ourselves much more self-reliant. Because just imagine that the population of Uttar Pradesh is probably more than any other European country, right? And if our states just trade amongst each other and become more specialized in what they do, they can cut the costs and they can increase domestic trade. So I think that's really something that we need to start talking more about and doing more of.
Right, very, very crucial there, boosting domestic trade in different ways. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for this interaction. Thank you.